The word is two letters, just two, N and O. It's one of the first words children learn to say. And yet, for some people, it becomes impossible. They watch themselves agree to things they don't want. They feel the word forming in their throat. They feel it right there on the tip of their tongue. And then, something happens. Something inside closes off, and instead of no, what comes out is okay, or even worse, yes, but never a no, even when every fiber of their being is screaming it. You might be someone like this. You might know someone like this. You might be sitting here thinking, why do I always say yes? Why do I commit to things that drain me? Why do I take on things I don't have time for? Why do I help people even when I'm running on empty? Why can't I just say no? Here's what's messed up about this pattern. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels automatic, like your mouth is working independently from your brain. Someone asks you something. There's a pause. That tiny fraction of a second where your real answer lives. And then your voice betrays you. Yeah, sure, I can do that. And you feel the weight of those words immediately. You feel the regret before you've even finished saying it. But it's too late. You've already said yes. You've already committed. You've already made another promise you're not sure you can keep. The thing about people who can't say no is that they're usually the ones drowning. They're usually the ones with 12 things on their plate and someone's asking them to add a 13th. They're usually the ones who look at their schedule and feel this crushing sensation in their chest. Too much. Too many commitments. Too many people depending on them. And still, when someone asks, when someone needs something, they say yes. They add another thing to the list. They become a little bit more depleted, a little bit more stretched thin, a little bit closer to breaking. And nobody sees it, because people who can't say no tend to be really good at hiding it. They smile, they show up, they do the work, they help, they support. They're the friend everyone wants because they're always there. They're the coworker who takes on extra projects. They're the family member who just helps without being asked. But what nobody sees is the internal chaos, the exhaustion that runs so deep you're not even sure you remember what it feels like to be rested. The resentment that's building quietly, day after day, because you're doing things you didn't want to do. The anger you're not allowed to feel because you said yes. How can you be mad? You agreed to it. Here's the psychological reality of this pattern. It doesn't come from being nice, it comes from fear. Deep, primal fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of disappointing people. Fear that if you say no, if you set a boundary, if you prioritize yourself, people will leave. They'll realize you're not worth keeping around. They'll find someone who'll give them what you won't. They'll reject you. And for people who carry this pattern, rejection feels like death. Not metaphorical death, real death. Because somewhere in their past, rejection or abandonment actually felt catastrophic. And they learned that the way to prevent that catastrophe is to never say no, to always be available, to always come through, to always put others first. Many of these people grew up in environments where their needs weren't met, where a parent was so consumed with their own problems that the child had to become invisible, had to be easy, had to not ask for anything. Or maybe they had a parent who was unpredictably angry, who would explode if displeased. And so the child learned, keep the parent happy. Don't ask for things. Don't say no. Don't make waves. Make yourself so useful, so agreeable, so indispensable that they can't leave you, that they have to keep you around. Some people grew up with conditional love, love that was given when they performed, when they achieved, when they made someone else's life easier, love that was withdrawn when they were selfish, when they had needs, when they weren't helpful enough. So they learned that their worth was tied to their usefulness, that being a good person meant sacrificing their own needs, that saying no was selfish, that boundaries were cruel, that the caring thing to do was to always put others first. And here's what's insidious about this.
These lessons become so integrated into their identity that they don't even recognize them as patterns anymore. They think they're just generous, just kind, just helpful. They don't see that they're actually afraid. They don't see that they're protecting themselves by being indispensable. They don't see that they're running from the fear of abandonment by making sure no one can abandon them. Because if you're always there, if you're always helping, if you're always saying yes, then people need you, and people who need you don't leave.
But here's what happens over time. The resentment grows, slowly, quietly, like a cancer that starts small and spreads. You're doing things you don't want to do. You're helping people who don't appreciate it. You're giving your time to things that don't matter to you. And nobody notices because you're smiling, you're showing up, you're being the reliable one. But inside you're furious, you're exhausted, you're grieving all the things you wanted to do but couldn't because you were too busy doing things for other people. And then something shifts. Sometimes it's a small thing. Someone asks you to do something small, something you've said yes to 1,000 times before. And suddenly you can't do it anymore. You can't say yes one more time. The weight of it breaks something in you. And then something really messed up happens. You explode, you snap, you say something you didn't mean to say. You hurt someone with your anger. And then the guilt comes, the crushing guilt. Because you're someone who doesn't hurt people. You're someone who helps. You're someone who's kind. And now you've proven to yourself and everyone else that you're not, that you're selfish, that you're mean, that you should have just said yes, that you should have just pushed through. So the pattern gets worse. You overcompensate. You say yes to even more things. You bend over backward to make up for your moment of weakness. You prove that you're good again, that you're worth keeping around, that you didn't mean to be selfish. And the cycle continues, deeper, darker, more exhausting. What's really interesting psychologically is how this pattern affects your sense of self. When you can't say no, you lose your agency, you lose your voice. You become defined by what other people need from you rather than who you actually are. You don't know what you want anymore because you've spent so long prioritizing what others want. You've become so good at reading what other people need that you've lost the ability to read yourself. And when you can't read yourself, when you can't hear your own needs, when you can't access what you actually want, something fundamental fractures inside you. People who can't say no often describe feeling like ghosts in their own lives, like they're living a life that belongs to someone else. They wake up, they do things other people want them to do, they go to bed, they repeat. They look at their calendar and it's filled with everyone else's priorities, their own dreams, their own goals, their own desires. Those get pushed further and further back. They become things to do eventually, someday, when there's time, which is never. And the relationships that form around this pattern are deeply unhealthy, because people who can't say no tend to attract people who are very comfortable asking. They attract takers, people who have learned that this person is safe to ask, this person will come through, this person won't set boundaries. So they keep asking, they keep pushing, they keep taking. And the person who can't say no keeps giving until there's nothing left to give. But even then, they try to find something. They try to dig deeper. They try to give more. Here's what's heartbreaking about this. The fear that drove this pattern, the fear of abandonment, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of being left, that fear becomes self-fulfilling. Because when you're running on empty, when you're resentful, when you're living a life that isn't yours, you become someone no one wants to be around. You become someone who uses you. You become someone who teaches people that your needs don't matter. And the people who actually love you, the people who would stay even if you said no, they eventually leave. Not because you set a boundary, but because you didn't set one soon enough. Because you gave so much of yourself that there was nothing left. The thing about learning to say no is that it feels impossibly hard, because saying no isn't just about saying a word, it's about fundamentally challenging every belief you have about your own worth. It's saying, my needs matter, my time matters, my peace matters. It's saying, I'm not responsible for managing other people's emotions. It's saying, I'm not required to sacrifice myself to be loved. And for people who have built their entire identity on being useful, on being needed, on being the one who helps, that feels like destruction. That feels like becoming a bad person. But here's the truth that changes everything. Saying no is not cruel. It's honest. It's respectful. It's the most kind thing you can do. Because when you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're not being helpful. You're being dishonest. You're making a promise you resent. You're setting yourself up to be resentful toward the other person. You're teaching them that they can't trust your yes because you don't really mean it. You're preventing them from finding someone who actually wants to help. You're depriving them of authentic support.
Real love doesn't require self-sacrifice. Real relationships don't require you to disappear. Real friends don't ask you to ignore your own needs. And the people worth keeping around are the ones who will respect your no, who will be sad when you can't help, but will understand, who will find someone else or do it themselves, who won't punish you or leave you or make you feel guilty for having boundaries. The path forward starts with awareness. Noticing when you're about to say yes and not wanting to. Sitting with that discomfort instead of running from it. Feeling the fear that comes up when you imagine saying no, and slowly, carefully, starting to practice. Starting small. I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I don't have the capacity for that right now. At first, it will feel impossible. It will feel selfish. It will feel wrong. But that feeling isn't truth. That's just the old fear talking. The voice from your past telling you that you're not allowed to have needs, that you're not worth keeping around if you're not useful. But you are. You're worth so much more than what you can do for other people. You're worthy of love even when you say no. You're worthy of friendship even when you have boundaries. You're worthy of rest. You're worthy of a life that's actually yours. If this resonates, if you're seeing yourself in this pattern, if you're recognizing the exhaustion and the resentment and the fear underneath it all, you're not alone. So many people carry this. So many people have learned that their needs don't matter. So many people have built their entire lives around keeping other people happy while their own happiness gets pushed further and further away. But awareness is the first step. Once you see the pattern, once you understand where it came from, you can begin to change it. Not overnight, not easily, but you can. You can learn to say no. You can learn that you're worth protecting. You can learn that setting a boundary is an act of self-love, not selfishness. Understanding these patterns, learning where they came from, that's what we do here at The Forgotten Self. We're exploring the psychology behind why we do what we do, the invisible patterns that run our lives, the things we've been taught that we're only beginning to question. If this video helped you see something about yourself, if it cracked something open, subscribe, because we're building something here. We're creating a space where the patterns can be named, where the fear can be acknowledged, where you can begin to reclaim your own life. Until next time, practice saying no, even if it feels impossible, especially if it feels impossible, because that's where the freedom is.